Kal Kadosh, good morning. I wanted to share with you a beautiful idea that I saw in Pirkei Avot in the 4th chapter that we read this past Shabbat, in Mishnah Aleph. We say, Ben Zoma Omer, Ben Zoma says, Ezeu Chacham, who is a wise person? Halomen Mikol Adam, somebody that learns from everybody. As it says in the Pasuk, Mikol Melamedai Iskalti, Ki Devotecha Sichali. It's a Pasuk in Tehillim Kuf Yutet, which means that from all the people I have learned, because your edot, because your statutes is what I speak about. Rabbeinu Yonah says something incredible. Listen to this, Rabbeinu Yonah, in the name of Chochmei Umot HaOlam. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, Mish Yodea et Kol HaChochmot, somebody that knows all different types of wisdoms. If he doesn't like wisdom, he's not a Chacham. However, though, you could have a fool that he knows nothing, but he loves wisdom. Even though he knows nothing, he's a Chacham. Why is he considered a Chacham? He says, because since he wants Chokhmah, he wants to become smart, he is a Chacham. So according to this Rabbeinu Yonah, what's actually coming out is something incredible. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, he says like this, a person has to understand the concept of a Chacham is not that he's wise, it's that he loves wisdom. A person that yearns to have wisdom. And it explains the Chasidi Avetz. The reason for this is because if he doesn't like wisdom, he will forget his learning. He won't pay attention to learning. And that's why he has to be a Chacham, is somebody that even if he doesn't know a lot now, but he yearns to be a Chacham. If you remember, we once brought this down in the name, I don't remember if it was, I think it was a Stipler, the Chazon Ish. They went and they brought somebody into the yeshiva for a shidduch, a very wealthy person, and he said, I want the best bachur. So he brings him to the yeshiva and he said, this bachur is the wisest of all the bachurim. And this bachur is, and he kept on going. Finally, he went and he said, Rabbi, I just want the best boy, right? I want the one that mamash everything. So, okay, the rabbi comes and he takes him to another bachur. And he told him, this is the bachur. So he says, Rabbi, you told me the smartest one was the one over there. The other one was over there. What's going on? He says, you know why? This bachur is a mevakesh. A mevakesh means somebody that's seeking, that's yearning, somebody that wants to grow, wants to learn. That person has a much greater chance in life in becoming somebody than all the rest. And it's true. That's what happens. But comes Rav Lau. He was the chief rabbi, not the son. Now this is talking about the father. And Rav Lau comes and he says, you should know, what is the greatest? Think about it. What is the greatest Torah, the greatest name that you could come and you could give a Jew? He says, you know what it is? A Talmid Chacham. Now he says, one second, Talmid Chacham. It's a contradictory in itself. Why? Because if he's a Chacham, meaning he's wise, he's not a Talmid, he's not a student. And if he's a student, if he's a Talmid, he's not a Chacham. So you have to decide, what is he? Is he a Chacham or is he a Talmid? Says Rav Lau, a Talmid Chacham is the greatest. Why? Because he's always learning. He never stops. From everything, he could always continue progressing in life. And it's so important, this message, to everything that we're doing, because at the end of the day, this is the message that we have to take to ourselves. Says Rav Nebenzahl, he's the one in charge. He's one of the Shiva of the Kotel and others. He comes and he says something incredible. He says, imagine right now a Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu is in charge of Am Yisrael for many years, right? Even if you're going to say it's a few years, he comes and he receives advice from a retired priest. Lo and behold, who's that retired priest? His father-in-law. Usually the father-in-laws, right? No comments, right? That's what we usually say. However, though, what happens is is that the father-in-law comes and he wants to give him a good piece of advice. So first of all, a lot of people right away, when it's mother-in-law, father-in-laws, keep the advice out. Keep it to yourselves. Or they say, put in the suggestion box. Where's the suggestion box? There's a garbage bin over there. Yeah, throw it over there. Don't tell us anything. But Moshe Rabbeinu listens. And he wants to hear what advice does he have to give. And what's interesting enough is, Moshe Rabbeinu could have said very easily, I don't understand. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told me to come to take Bnei Yisrael out of Mitzrayim. I took them out of Egypt. I gave them the beatings of their lives. I did Kriyat Yam Suf. I'm giving them Matan Torah according to the opinion that he was after Matan Torah before. I did everything. Now you're going to come and you're going to give me a word of advice? What's going on exactly? Kilo, I need your advice? But what does it say in the Torah? The Torah says, Vayas kol asher amar. He did everything that his father-in-law told him. Why? Because for us, especially, we know when people come from the outside and they want to give us a lot of advice, many times we don't take it the greatest. Many times we think to ourselves and say, what's going on here? Nobody asked you. We don't need your advice. Nobody told you to come and do an examination of a panel and this and that and start looking into, the betterment of the community. No. But what happened? He came and he did something incredible. Moshe Rabbeinu comes and he wants to listen. Because the words of wisdom, he wants to learn from everybody. He wants to hear, what can I learn? There's something I can gain here. And that's why it's so important. They bring down in the name of Rav Zusha of Anipoli something incredible. When we're talking about that you want to learn from everybody, he comes and he says, this is brought down in the Art Scroll, Pirkei Avot. He says, do you know you could learn 3 things from a baby and 7 things from a thief? Yeah, listen carefully. 3 things you can learn from a baby. Number 1, a baby's always doing something. He's always busy. He's either eating, sleeping, but he's always doing something. It's not just nothing. He's always doing something. Number 2, when he lacks something, he's not embarrassed to cry for it because that's what he needs. Number 3, the second you give him the most essential things that he needs, he's happy. He doesn't need anything else. So Rav Zusha said, look what we could come ourselves and learn from this baby. 3 different things, important concepts in life. But now he passes to the Ganav, to the thief. And listen to this. He says, what are the 7 things that you can learn from a thief? Number 1, a thief does everything at nighttime, so people can't see him. So he says, we learn from here that when we're going to be doing our mitzvot and Torah mitzvot, we should try to do it privately. We don't have to put it on a public stand of what we're doing. Number 2, even if we don't have success today, we're going to try it again tomorrow because we're not going to give up hope. And that's by any thief. Number 3, he's very trustworthy to his friends, which means to the other thieves, he won't give them over to the government and he won't steal from them either. That's number 3. Number 4, even if he'll try to come and steal things which have no value, which means many times we come and we say, this type of a mitzvah, it's worthless. 1 second, a thief, he'll steal anything, even if it doesn't have a lot of value, because that's his nature, becomes something that he wants. So too, we have to run to do Torah mitzvot, even if we think it's a small one, but it has value. Number 5, he'll sell something cheap, even though he worked very hard to get it, as long as he doesn't get caught. That's the main thing. So he'll come, he'll steal, and even if it's worth a lot, he'll come and just sell it cheap, just to get out of it. So he continues doing what he needs to do. Say Chachamim, that means that we should not do mitzvot, right, for trying to get a big reward from it. Because even if we just have to do it, and that's it. Number 6, he'll never tell anybody of his successes, and he won't tell you his future, what he's planning. Why? He knows the second he starts telling them, that's it. How many times does it happen that a thief comes and he says how he did it, and then that's it. And then he has to learn a new trick how to do it because they already caught on to it and he lost everything. And number 7, he loves his profession and he'll never switch it for anything else in the world, which means the thief, that's what he loves. So the same thing with ourselves, which means that what Rav Zusha ben Anipoli was trying to teach us is that from every single human being, you can learn something from them. It doesn't exist not to learn, when it says, Ezu chacham alomed mikol adam, who is a wise person, somebody that can learn from everybody, it means every single human being, you can learn from them. The Khatam, the Avot of, it says also like Avot of Rabbi Eliezer, it says over there as follows, En adam ba'olam she'ema lilmod mimenu. Do you know there doesn't exist any person in this world where you cannot learn from him? If he's a chacham, if he's wise, you can learn from his wisdom. If he's a person that has good midot, you can learn from his midot. And even if he's actually a fool, you can learn from him how to move away from it. Which means, just like the famous story of the drunk person, if he doesn't see what it is actually there, so that he doesn't know what to distance himself from it. But once he sees the truth, then he says, you know what? This person, this is what I'm doing. Look what a foolish person it looks like when a person is running after kavod or doing these certain things. So I have to learn what not to do. I have to learn how to distance myself from those things. And that's why the Khatam Sofer says on the Chovot HaLevavot, he says, from the Ovrei Retzono Yitbarach, from the people that transgress the will of Hashem, we can learn how to stay away from it. How to actually come and say, no, we want to distance ourselves. The Baal Shem Tov used to say, even from the Yetzer Hara you can learn. Why? How does the Yetzer Hara trick a person into doing certain things? The Yetzer Hara will always tell you to do with mitzvot in another 5 minutes. Tomorrow, we'll do a little bit later. To do with averot, now, you won't get another chance. But 1 second, why is it like that? Because again, we have to learn from the Yetzer Hara how to act ourselves. And what are we supposed to do? Flip the coin on him. When you want to do a mitzvah, right now. When you want to do an averah, in another 5 minutes. Because that's his secret. We have to learn his weaponry, learn how he does war, learn our enemy in order to confront our enemy. Not only are we supposed to learn mikol adam from human beings, the Gemara Masechet Eruvin, Daf Kuf Amud says, if it wasn't for the fact that Torah was given, we would have still learned everything. But from where? From the animals. And there the Gemara comes and starts stating every single animal, what you can learn. Incredible teachings about sniut from a chatul, right? Being modest. A cat will not do its necessities in front of other animals. Laziness from an ant. The ants, even though they only live for a few months, they'll come and they'll start gathering food and food and food. Why? Just in case God will give them another few months to live. Right? Derech eretz from a tarnegol. Right? Derech eretz from a rooster. How he appeases and then does his necessities. Every single animal, you could learn the positive of what it is and how we are supposed to actually act in ourselves. And that's why it's so important. Rav Simcha Zissel Mikelem says something very interesting. Do you know, every single human being, they always pay attention to something which speaks to them. I remember I was in yeshiva and I was learning once with a barber. He was a barber in the yeshiva. It was incredible how to see that any person that walked in, what was the first thing that he saw? The haircut. Look at this. The rabbi over there, they went all the way up. They went too far up when they were coming and they were cutting his hair. This person, it's not straight. Look how it is. He says a tailor, what does he always look at? The suits. Yeah? A jeweler is always looking at diamonds or the watches. They're always looking at it. Every single person, when they have a certain type of an interest, that's what calls them. You're going to show a picture and the same picture to a group of people. The jeweler will come, he'll pay attention to the jewelry, to the watch, to the rings, to what's going on. Bracelets, necklaces. You're going to talk about the tailor, someone in the design fashion, they're going to be looking at the clothing, and so on and so forth. An interior designer, they're going to see how everything is in the picture. How do they have the couches? How do they have this? Every single human being to do with their profession. So he comes and he says, who's the Chacham? The Chacham is Alomed Mikol Adam, from all of them together. What does that mean, from all of them together? Rav Wolbe, that he was a very famous mashkiach in the last generation, he came and he explained the words of the Saba Mikelem, and he said like this. He says, each one only pays attention to what interests them, but they don't pay attention to what interests somebody else. He says the lomed mikol adam is somebody that he'll learn from everybody. Meaning, I'm not a tailor, but if I already see that you're paying an interest, I'll want to learn from you. What can I learn from it? What do I see from it? I'm not a baker, but when I'm around, I want to learn from it. Do you know there was a famous Rosh Yeshiva that he became an expert in medicine? How did he become an expert in medicine? I think it was his mother or his father, they had the machala, the sickness. And it was very difficult for them. They were in the hospital the entire time, and it was very difficult for them to learn. So when they had a few minutes spare, they always used to go downstairs to the library, and they were just reading books on refuah, on medicine books, right? Medical journals, essays, forward, this, that. He became, after a full year, he became an expert in medicine. And he said, why? Not because he was in a scenario that he wasn't able to learn Torah. Is he just not going to do nothing? You always have to be in a constant mode of learning. I want to seek wisdom. I want to learn, because everything that you're able to learn is wisdom in itself. The rabbis were always bekim in everything. Chokhmah of music, of the world, of everything there was around them, of the animals, right? Just think about what it was, whether it was the Talmidim, of Hillel Zaken, of everyone. They were experts in everything. They knew about animals. They knew about human beings. They knew about the cycles. They knew about everything that you wanted, because it was a wisdom. And they wanted to learn, and they wanted to continue growing. This, in essence, is so important, because if we're not going to learn, we're actually going to be punished for it. How do we see this? How do we see that if we're not going to learn, we're actually going to be punished? So listen to this. The Torah. It's actually going to be in 2 weeks. Parashat Naso, it's brought down. Why is it that Parashat Nazir is brought right after Parashat Sotah? And he says to tell you that if you see a woman that she went and she rebelled against her husband, or there's even a doubt of infidelity, what happens is that you come and we give her to drink, and we test whether she did do something improper or not. Says Rav Wolbe, why is it that the Nazir is right afterwards? He says very simple. When you come and you see this woman, there has to be a difference of an approach. Our approach is, how did she go to such a low level? Look at this woman. She's, I don't know what. You're going to think of crazy things about her. However, though, he says, no. We have to learn from her, how did she get to such a level? What happened? What was the catalyst? What made her stoop to such a low level that she could have done such a thing? And from there, we have to learn what not to do. So therefore, what happened? So for us, we realize, what was it? Yain, wine, laughter. These things, they bring a person to do erva. They bring a person to do immorality. They start having a drink. They start having a good time. They start joking around with each other. And all of a sudden they fall. At the beginning, you say, what? It was just a friendship. There was nothing really there. And all of a sudden, it goes to the next level. So therefore, it comes and he says, why was he brought right after? Because of the punishment. That if a person comes and they didn't do this, they're punished for it. The next one is Ba'alotecha and Shelach, which is right afterwards. Remember, it's Bamidbar, Naso, Ba'alotecha, Shelach. At the end of Parashat Ba'alotecha, we have Miriam. Miriam and Neviah, she was a prophet. And who did she speak against? Moshe Rabbeinu, her brother. She spoke because she felt bad about her brother. Said, how could he divorce his wife? What's going on? There's something wrong here. And then what's right after the next parasha? The Meraglim, the spies. Says Rashi the same thing. The Midrash. Why is the story of the spies right after the story of Miriam? He says because they should have learned. They should have realized the consequences. When they saw what happened to Miriam, that she had leprosy for 7 full days. She had leprosy. Why? Because she spoke against her brother. Here, they didn't speak against a human being. You know who they spoke about? The land of Israel. An inanimate object. A land. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you should have learned. Learn the consequences of your mouth. And if you guys want, look, last night I gave a shiur on Pirkei Avot, the last part of the first chapter, when we speak about Lo matzati laguf tov el shetika, the most beautiful thing that a person has is keeping their mouth quiet. And we spoke about the importance of what it is, that everything is in the power of the mouth. The mouth is the most powerful limb of the entire body. Besides the fact that you have the two clothing, the two openings and closures in order to protect ourselves, it actually is everything is dependent upon the mouth. And there was a beautiful midrash there to illustrate this point so eloquently, so incredibly, how we don't realize it. But everything is in the mouth. Everything that we do has to do with our mouths, how we purify our mouths, how we contaminate our mouths, what we do with our mouths. Everything is in our mouth. And the fact that they didn't learn, they were punished. And the exact same thing happened with Bilam. What happened with Bilam? Bilam Arasha, he came to curse the Jewish nation. He went with his donkey. The donkey turned astray 3 different times. The first time he went, he stopped. Second time he crouched down. The third time he crushes his leg against the wall. Every single time something different. And all of a sudden his eyes open up and he sees a malach. And he says, malach hatati. I sinned. I didn't realize you were going to be there. So ask the rabbis, 1 second. What's the Shlach Kadosh says? What's chatati? What did he say he didn't see? But he says, you know what? Very, very simple. If you see that things are not going right, if you see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sending you messages from Hashem and you're not paying attention, that is chatati. That is that I sinned, because we had to wake up. We had to open up our eyes to realize what exactly is going on. Why didn't we see it? Because we could have seen it. We could have opened up our eyes and say, there's something wrong. There's something that we still didn't learn. There's something here. And that's why it's just so important for us just to understand. It once happened with the Chavetz Chaim. The Chavetz Chaim, there was a Jew that came from China to the Chavetz Chaim. And what happened was, he was coming and he said, what? He's not going to go get a beracha from the Gadol Hador. So he went to the Chavetz Chaim for a beracha. And he comes and he starts asking him. And he asks him, no, how is it in China? So he comes and he tells him, listen, it's very, very difficult over there. I don't know what to do. There's not a lot of rabbis. There's not a lot of shechita. There's not a lot of anything. So the Chavetz Chaim went and he said, you're right. It's a problem in all of Am Yisrael. And that's why I wrote a special sefer called Nidchei Yisrael for all the people that are in the diaspora. Learn it, take the sefer, learn it, teach it, and you should have atzlacha. But then he comes and he says, what else is happening? So he went and he said, okay, no. There was a breach. What happened is that there was a huge dam over there that it broke. And what happened is that the water came and it over flooded. Thousands of people were misplaced. There were a lot of casualties. And all of a sudden, the Chavetz Chaim is all scared. And he wants to know every single type of detail. So he tells him, why? Midat adin, justice. So the person comes and asks the Chavetz Chaim, Rebbe, what does that have to do with us? So says the Chavetz Chaim, I don't understand you. If somebody would right now come in the middle of the town square of Warsaw, Poland, comes and he puts a big step. He gets up there and starts screaming in Yiddish. Who's he speaking to? So the person said, obviously the Jews. For us. So he says, why? He says, we're the only ones that understand the language. So he says, exactly. He says, we are the only ones that understand the language of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And we understand that anything that happens in this world, we're supposed to learn from it. And it's for us to learn because we speak that language. And therefore, we have to actually understand and internalize and say to ourselves, 1 second, how do we become better? What can we learn from there? Because that's the explanation. Halomed mikol adam. Halomed mikol adam means you have to learn from everything which is around. And that's our mission in life, to learn from every single thing occurring around us. You know, we actually see it from the Negaim as well. Why do we see it from the Negaim? The Negaim are the plagues, right? That used to come, the boils, the blisters and everything. Why? At the beginning, it comes to a person's house. After a person's house, it comes to a person's body. A person's clothing. And only afterwards does it come to a person's body. If a person learned early enough, so it was already enough on his house, they repented, and then that's it. If they didn't learn early enough, so then what happens is it goes on the clothing. And again, the same thing. If they're early enough, they'll learn from the clothing and they'll stop. But if not, then it actually goes on the human being. We have to learn from the messages which are in front of us, right? And not understand later on. Rav Yisrael Salanter, how did he live his life? You know, he lived his life. Everything that happened around him, he learned from everything. He once went into a shoemaker. And when he went into the shoemaker, he went and he told him, right, I know it's very, very late. Can I still give you a pair of shoes to fix? But it really was already closed. The shoemaker told him, Kol zman she'aner dolek efshar letaken. He told him, as long as the candle is still lit, I could still fix it. The Rav Yisrael Salanter was listening to this goy shoemaker, and he heard the musar lesson of his life. Again, the shoemaker didn't intend to give him musar. He didn't intend to direct him or to give him on the head or to do anything. But he heard it. What did he hear? You know what he heard? He heard one simple thing. He heard, as long as the neshama, which the ner is the ner Hashem nishmat adam, the ner, the candle represents the neshama, the soul of a human being. As long as it's still lit, we could still fix it. Rav Yisrael Salanter learned that message just from that moment. He was able to see it, to feel it, to internalize it, that this person is speaking to me. You're right, it had to do with the shoes as well, 100%. But he's actually speaking to me. And I wanted to share with you, because if you remember, I spoke and I told you once about this, you saw this concept. And there's a famous book called Listen to Your Messages by Rabbi Franz. And I wanted to read to you there two different stories, incredible stories that make an impact, that show us that many times in life we hear something and we don't realize why, and we don't pay attention to it. I was just actually also learning last night, I was teaching them the Pirkei Avot. Again, you could go on YouTube and you could see it. Pirkei Avot, Mishnah 6, I think it was 16 and 17 or 17 and 18 on Pirkei Avot chapter 1. And there it brought down a beautiful yesod that happened with, right, this is talking about Rabban Shimon Gamliel. Rabban Shimon Gamliel was the Nasi. Rabbi Meir was the Chacham. There's Rabbi Meir Balanes. And Rabbi Natan was the Aved Din. And what happened was that he made a distinction of how do you stand up for each person. In order to give strength to the Nesiut, to the prince, that he was like the chief rabbi. So even though there was other rabbis that are smarter, but they had to make a distinction. So he made a distinction and the other two rabbis were not happy about it. So what happened is they went and they wanted to test him. Publicly, they were going to ask him a question on certain halachot that they knew he was clueless. And once he was going to be clueless, they were going to say, listen, if he doesn't know, how's he the chief rabbi? We have to take him off. What happened was, there was another rabbi there, I forgot his name now, that he felt bad. And he said, how could this happen to the Nasi? He's coming from Rabban Shimon Gamliel, coming from Gamliel, coming from Hillel, coming from David HaMelech. This is what's going to go on. We can't do this. So what did he do? He went behind him, right where he was learning, and he started learning Masechet Uktzin and going over it again and again and again. Rabban Shimon Gamliel stopped and he thought, 1 second, there's something weird here. Why did he come sit right behind me and he starts learning this? There's a message here. There's something here. So he started learning it. The entire night he was learning it. The next morning, they come into the Bet HaMidrash and the two rabbis go for the kill. They say, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, the Nasi, can you please teach us Masechet Uktzin? He went and he started teaching them the entire thing from the beginning until the end. And any questions that they had, he was able to answer. And then afterwards, he told them, stand up. And he told them, the fact that you wanted to embarrass me out of the Bet HaMidrash, because you wanted to embarrass me as if that I didn't know Masechet Uktzin. So they sent them out. There was a whole story over there. And then they brought them back in. They called Rabbi Meir Acherim. They called Rabbi Natanya Shomrim. The whole story. He listened to the message. He realized that if somebody's learning something right behind me, I'm listening in. I have to hear. Put in the frequency. Let me change and see what am I supposed to be listening to. So listen to this. Rabbi Frand on page 28. Because remember, it doesn't go according to Parashiot, right? It goes according to pages. So it's on page 28 of the book. He says, some time ago, I went to visit my mother in Seattle. That year, we decided that my mother was no longer going to make Pesach. From then on, she was always going to come to us for Pesach. So she was going to go to Baltimore for Pesach. So my mother packed up her Pesach dishes so that way they could ship it to Baltimore. So he put them in the trunk, right? And then they went to go to the post office. On the way, he comes and he tells her, listen, Mom, do me a favor. When we get there, let me schlep the boxes. Let me take the boxes. Don't do it yourself. It's not good for you at your age. Okay. Sure enough, they get there. She opened up the rear door, right? While he was opening up the trunk, and she was going to take the boxes. So he says, please don't take the boxes. I'll schlep the boxes. Okay. He goes to the back seat, take the boxes. And then where did she go? She went to the trunk to take the boxes. So again, he said, please, I'm begging you. So he was already getting frustrated. Don't take out the boxes. Now, while this is going on, there was a man standing nearby in the parking lot. And he was watching and he started smiling. So he gives him a wink to Rabbi Frand and he tells him, mothers. So Rabbi Frand answers, isn't that the truth? Yeah, because he rolled his eyes and he said, this is mothers. What do you want? Yeah. So he comes and he says, isn't that the truth? So he comes and he answers and he says, well, be glad you still have one. That was the punchline. He said, that's a message. He said, there's no question about it. It was a message delivered by a postman, by a man in the post office parking lot. That's all that it was. But it was a message. Rabbi Frand learned the message that even though the mother was coming and it was afna, yeah, she was a pain. She's not listening. But at the end of the day, he learned the message. He listened to it and he caught on to it. He had to be happy that he still had a mother, right? Because not everyone has a mother. The other one, he says, messages can come from all different types of directions, but sometimes it could even come from our own mouths. And listen to this incredible story. He said a woman was interested in becoming religious and in studying in Yerushalayim. So she was learning about Torah, mitzvot, and she's making progress. She's on her way. One day she comes to her teacher and she tells him, I decided to leave. So he asks her, why did you decide to leave? Because I'm pregnant. So I want to terminate my pregnancy. I want to abort. So he asks her, why do you want to terminate the pregnancy? So she says, I want to embark a career. I want to get a profession. I want to learn. And it's just going to make it too difficult on me. So he asks her, what does your husband say? Says, no, he stands by my decision. So now the teacher realizes that she already decided. It's not like he could really convince her. So now he switches the approach. And now he says like this, listen, you should know, yeah, it's going through an abortion is very difficult. It's a dangerous procedure, also mentally, physically. Why don't we go to a holy person, a big rabbi, and let's ask him for a beracha? But I'll come with you as an interpreter. Yeah? Interpreter. So she comes, she says, no problem. And he takes her purposely to Rosh Hashanah in Auerbach. So she comes to Rosh Hashanah in Auerbach and she says, Rabbi, I want a bracha, I want a blessing. You see, I'm going to terminate my pregnancy. So Rosh Hashanah in Auerbach comes and he says, why do you want to terminate your pregnancy? So she says, because I want to pursue a career. She says, what type of career do you want to pursue? So what does she answer? I want to become a doctor. Yeah? So he comes and he tells her, and why do you want to become a doctor? So she says, because a doctor saves lives. So he asks her, right? Really? And what is so important about saving lives? So she's startled. She's looking, where did this rabbi come from? I thought I was coming to a big rabbi. So she gives Rav Shlomo Zalman a weird look and she says, what, is he senile? What's going on here? What's important about saving lives? Saving life is the most important thing in the world. And she said, saving a life is the most important thing in the world. And all of a sudden, she stopped. And it hit her. She looks at Rav Shlomo Zalman, and then she points at her stomach. And she says, you don't mean this, do you? And Rav Shlomo Zalman looks at her and he says, it can become a life, a living human being. The woman was startled. She couldn't move. She just nodded and she heard the message. It wasn't from the donkey's mouth. like Bilam. It wasn't from anything else, not from a shoemaker. It wasn't from a man in the parking lot, right, about his mother. She heard it from her own mouth. Rav Shlomo Zalman was only the utensil, was only the shliach from Hashem to bring it out of her. But she herself said the message, and she learned the message. When we are now during the time of Sefirat HaOmer, we have to realize, where did Rabbi Akiva learn the message from? Rabbi Akiva learned the message from a stone. Why did he learn the message from the stone? He saw the water that was dripping into the stone, and he learned the message. He said, if the water can penetrate into the rock, which is very hard, and water is soft, Torah could penetrate into my heart, because Torah is strong. It's powerful, but only just open up our hearts. But we have to learn how to read the messages. Hashem sends us messages all day. Just open up our eyes. Realize those messages. How many times does it happen that a person wants to do an Avidah or wants to do something and he gets a text, and all of a sudden they're saying, and you're thinking to yourself, Ribono Shel Olam, what's going on? What are you trying to send me? Open up our eyes. Learn the messages. Ezu chacham halomeh mikol adam. If you're truly wise, it's not how much wisdom you have acquired. It's how much wisdom you pursue. How much wisdom you want. Are you thirsty for wisdom? That is called a chacham. Because right now you can know nothing. But if you truly want to learn, you'll be able to grow in everything and to truly be a tamid chacham, a person that is a chacham. Bezrat Hashem, I just hope that we can internalize this message in order to continue growing. Bezrat Hashem.